Good morning. I spend quite a bit of my time outside around our house. We have a nice large front yard. We got a fence, landscaping, we got great trees. We love it, but I spend quite a bit of time trimming, or as we called it growing up, weed eating. I still call it that. There always seems to be grass or weeds growing where I don't want them to. We weed eat, we pull them out by hand, or we employ chemical warfare and kill all the undesirable weed and grass growth that we can. Where we don't want it, we just eliminate it. Chances are you've had this same battle at your house, and the weed killing chemicals, they work, but many times I find myself simply killing good and beautiful healthy grass just to get rid of the weeds or to get it off of another structure on our property. If it's undesirable, I'll just kill it all. And in Matthew 13, Jesus tells a parable about the kingdom of God by using the growth of weeds and wheat, something desirable and something undesirable. He says the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his servants were sleeping, not paying attention, the enemy comes in and sows weeds among the wheat. His servants see what's happened, and they're wondering if their boss himself has sowed bad seed. They say, "What you doing, boss? Did you sow bad seed? There's weeds out here." The master knows that an enemy has done this, and he tells the men that rather than pull up the weeds and run the risk of uprooting the good wheat on accident, they should just leave it be, let them grow up together, and they should be allowed to coexist, mixed together for a while, for a season. Then when harvest time comes, he would tell the reapers to go and gather it and separate it, binding the weeds to be thrown into the fire, but gathering the wheat to be stored into the barn. Some theologians believe that the weeds Jesus was referring to here was probably a type of rye grass that resembles wheat in its early stages as it's beginning to grow, but then becomes more distinguishable as it grows and matures. And this type of weed can actually be poisonous to the crop around it, to the wheat mentioned here. And as we live in our world, what Jesus is getting at, we'll be attending our churches, we'll be interacting with others in our communities and working with them. We must realize that God allows both believers and non-believers to live, work, and play together, to even attend church together. I know that at the time I asked God to save me. I had been living as a weed amongst wheat myself. I performed the best I could. I tried to look like other churchgoers. I gave a fair attempt at morality, and I trusted ultimately in my own self for figuring out what the meaning of life was. And I was self-reliant, not very confident, and frankly confused. I claimed that I was a believer while knowing I wasn't wheat. I was just a weed. I thought that if I could just be a little bit more good than bad by the time I died, then maybe God would let me into heaven. And we're not called to live that way, right? This is actually one of the passages that God used to speak to me on the night of my salvation. He showed me I was lost through this idea of wheat and weeds. And as I thought about it and prayed to him, I knew that if I were to die, if I were to pass away, I wouldn't be gathered into the barn like the good, useful wheat. That wasn't me. I would be bound and burned with the weeds. That's when I realized the truth of the gospel. When I had that revelation from God just showing me forgiveness is not based on my work. It's based on the finished work of Jesus. And we should be patient now as we live and see the wrongs and injustices done around the world and close to home. We see all these things. We know that God will make things new. He will make things right in the end. But we live in this world, believers and non-believers, wheat and weeds. We're growing together, and we have to know and understand and realize that God will sort things out in the end. Sometimes we just need to trust and press on as we live life. When things get confusing, God is going to make things right. The truth is that he knows what's best, and he will most certainly have the last word. And in the meantime, while we're growing up together, let's love one another, serve one another, and be useful to our master and be useful for the kingdom. This passage brought me full circle with realizing what it meant to follow Jesus. I pray that it does the same for you as well.